The state of Illinois narrowly avoiding a credit downgrade to junk status after several state Republicans broke ranks to join Democrats in a vote to raise the state's income tax. Fitch Ratings agency hailing the move as a positive first step, but warning that a failure to pass a budget would result in that downgrade. Governor Bruce Rauner vetoed the tax hike, but state senators voted to override that veto, and the House could follow suit today. Let's bring in Cato Institute senior fellow and tax policy analyst Dan Mitchell. Dan, just what do you make? So this tax hike passes both houses. It would raise the state income tax just over 1%. But what do you make of these Republicans essentially giving into this?
The Republicans who are selling out in Illinois are no different than the Republicans in Washington who are throwing roadblocks in the way of Obamacare repeal. A lot of Republicans get very comfortable with big government. They wind up developing strong relationships with the special interest lobbies, and ultimately they don't represent taxpayers. So having an R after your name is no guarantee of good policy. But here's one thing I can say for sure. Notwithstanding what Fitch is saying, this will hasten, if this tax increase goes through, it will hasten Illinois' downfall, because you can't lock people inside your state. And we've already seen a huge migration. Hundreds of thousands of people have already left Illinois, and to simply add to an already high tax burden with an increase in the state income tax rate, this is sort of like you've been smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, you got a diagnosis of cancer, and you start increasing your smoking.
Well, you've seen it in states like even Connecticut, where the state of Connecticut has driven businesses out. And you do begin this vicious cycle. And even more importantly, you've seen it at the local level, say in Detroit, where you have a declining revenue base, and then you continually raise taxes on the few people who can afford it, and they just move elsewhere. And it's a downward spiral that could lead to bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's the state version of the Laffer curve, where you can impose a high tax rate, but it doesn't mean you're going to collect more revenue. But probably the most important thing to understand is all these states that are in fiscal crisis, these are already the high-tax states of the country. And so that should tell us something about whether or not you should copy Greece with higher taxes, or France. That's just not a good recipe. But here's the data I think all your viewers should understand. If you look at per capita state government spending, these states are already spending, in many cases, several $1,000s more per capita than other states. And ask yourself this: if you're a resident of Illinois or Connecticut or New Jersey, are you getting something for all that money? Your state government is bigger, your taxes are higher, but you're not getting anything more than residents of New Hampshire or Pennsylvania or Indiana. You have a big bloated government, mostly because politicians are in bed with the public employee unions.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's talk about the unions, Dan, because in the state of Illinois, the state pension fund is saddled with $251 billion in unfunded liabilities. And the Wall Street Journal today on its front page takes a look at that very pension crisis and reports that police pensions are one major hot button issue with these state budgets, but it's because the police, the public does stand behind these police, but then the lawmakers essentially overpromise the benefits to these law enforcement entities.
Yeah, it's a great deal if you're a politician, because you're sitting down with the government employee unions and you say to them, hey, you give me campaign contributions, and I'll give you this completely unsustainable promise for pensions and benefits later on. That doesn't show up in this year's budget, so the politicians can be extravagant with those kinds of promises, but sooner or later the bill comes due, and that's what you're seeing in states like Illinois. And again, not just Illinois, California, New Jersey, Connecticut, all these high-tax states in the long run are just digging themselves a grave, because they're making these promises, getting the campaign contributions, leaving the bill for future generations. But guess what? That future is in effect now in some of these states, and in others, it's just a matter of time.
Well, Dan, this is Lindsay Bell here. I just have a question. How do they fix that then? You know, all these states with these major pension plans, maybe they should go the way of many corporations who have frozen them and not offered them to new employees.
The thing to do, and Michigan has just done this, is you shift for new state and local government workers, shift to a 401k type model. And when you have what's called a defined contribution system instead of a defined benefit system, that's automatically fiscally sustainable. You know how much money is being put in your account. Your retirement benefits are based on that account. It's not an empty political promise to tax future people in the state. So it's a much better approach. The other thing they should do is copy Colorado. Colorado has something called TABOR, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. The most important thing there, it's a spending cap. So spending can't grow faster over time than the underlying growth of the state's economy. But when you have states like Illinois and New Jersey, California, et cetera, if government keeps growing faster than the private sector year after year after year, sooner or later you're going to become Greece.
Great. Dan, thank you. Dan,
Thank you.
it was good to see you this morning. Make sense of something that politicians can't.